Well, welcome to the final Resiliency Experience of 2020 for Roaring Fork Leadership, and I'm excited to have Leah Weiss attending with me, who's the new Roaring Fork Leadership Program and Marketing Coordinator. So thanks for being here, Leah. All the way from Florida, even though she lives in the Roaring Fork Valley.
That's all right. Thanks for hosting this. I'm excited to learn with you.
Thanks. Well, I know we're going to have other people had signed up, so if they join us along the way, great. Otherwise, of course, this recording will be on our Roaring Fork Leadership YouTube channel. So I'm today sharing some research that I have done over the last few months in a master's program that I've started in organizational leadership. And I picked a topic called Resilience Victim to Empowered. And of course, the influence of that for me is based on the emotional intelligence work that I already do. What was interesting is realizing how many EQ assessments I have given out and how many 1-hour coaching calls I've done based on the assessment. I think it's 398, something like that. Maybe it's more. Actually, it's more. I think that's just women. So almost 600. So the idea is, you know, what have I learned? What's disseminated from that information on top of what's already been researched, and then what could be further researched? You know, it's like what I'm learning in the master's program too. It's, you know, like you keep building knowledge, right? Like you find one research paper and then you wonder how you can advance from here, right? And then of course, that's, if you think of even leadership, it's, you know, even knowing how your personal development, it's like, wow, I just learned this about myself. What's next? Right? It's this constant evolution, and that's hence why learning is one of my core values. And I've actually recently changed that word to curiosity, because I think that if I'm more curious versus just wanting to learn, I think that opens up new ways of looking at things compared to just saying I want to learn a fact or I want to have knowing. It's more of I want to learn and curious, and then where do you go from here? So again, it becomes this never-ending process of being curious in the world of what's out there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm excited to have Karen McConnell join us. She is a RFL alumni, just graduated last year. So screen share going. Fantastic. So again, I wanted just to, the research again was kind of looking at it through the lens of emotional intelligence and what composites, what skills are most important to developing resiliency. And I looked at it also from the lens of, I think when we're a victim, that idea of when we're victimized or we feel we're powerless, right, where we become a victim is the kind of one end of the continuum. And of course, when we're powerful, right, that's where we're empowered to do something about it. So that I feel like that's the continuum that we tend to fall into quite often as humans, as we try to think about how do I build resilience. So I developed a resiliency model. There's very few of these out there. And to me, the basics behind this and the research does validate that when we're at the effect of something, right, the idea is that we're feeling more of a victim and powerless compared to when we can look at ourselves and be cause in the matter, take charge, have power to do something that gives us access to like that human experience, right, to grow. So that's when we're empowered. And the idea is, though, resilience is in that middle point of like being, we all find ourselves in some sort of victim a lot in our lives. And the idea is when we become aware of it, that gives us the opportunity to choose to do something different, right? To change. Leah, we were talking about that earlier today, right? It's that opportunity to change what's not working. But again, we have to become aware. So in the EQI 2.0 model that I'll show you here shortly, there's 15 subcomposites. What I found is that emotional self-awareness, stress tolerance, problem solving, empathy, optimism, and happiness give you the highest access to being more resilient in the world. And I know there's going to be more connections, but I think these 6 provide you, again, the highest probability of getting from victim to empowered more quickly, right? Because I think also when we're in victim, we find ourselves like in pain. We don't like it. It's uncomfortable. We want solutions, but we can also get comfortable being in victim because, again, it's what we know, right? I don't have to grow. I can just stay here. So it's interesting, right, as humans, how we do like sometimes being knowing, right? If I know what uncomfortableness, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's not, right? And I think, again, that gives you access to being resilient. So the thing for me is when awareness arises for an individual, let's say of pessimism, something, let's say, in the negative realm of the world through thoughts and behaviors, that's the moment. If we can pinpoint those moments that something is happening that we're kind of resisting, we don't like, to me, that's the opportunity to get really curious, right? To say, okay, there's something going on here that might put me into that, let's say, more on that victim side of the scale versus the empowered, right? Feeling powerless versus powerful. And that is, again, when we can identify those moments, even when they're happening, right? That's like, to me, how we can move quicker. We have more access to it versus being unconscious or blinded by those types of behaviors. So the problem statement I took on in my research paper was, high emotional intelligence is known to be a predictor of success in life. And it's true. There's been a lot of research behind emotional intelligence assessments that the higher your EQ is, EQ and EI are interchangeable, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. The higher your EQ or EI is, the more success in life you are. So 63% predictability when somebody has high EQ to them being more successful in life compared to an IQ, which is around 26%. So when we know that's part of can be a success factor for us having a more fulfilling life. The idea is when we do have challenges in life, how can we know, right, that I'm in a challenge, I'm uncomfortable, and then again be able to move. Or if we're blind in that moment, it's okay. Again, this is just the human experience. It's going to happen to all of us a lot. Then the idea is, how can you, even through your physical body, right? Tension might show up. You might start clenching jaws. I've noticed when I repeat a story multiple times to others, it's like I'm complaining. And then I hear myself, like the third time I hear myself tell the same story to a different person, I'll even ask myself, God, what am I looking for as to why I'm sharing this story so often, right? That's an insight. So we just have to look at our own behaviors for that. So this victim mentality shows up. And in a moment here, Karen and Leah, I'm going to ask a question, if you're willing to answer, to think about yourself, right, where these types of behaviors might show up. So then my next slide is showing you a slide of what these behaviors might look like. So that victim mentality, right, victim behaviors is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to recognize or consider themselves a victim. So this is like a negative action happened, right? I mean, how many times have you called customer service at a phone company or a cable company? Multiple places, right? I'm not just pinpointing those. And you're just frustrated, right? Off the bat, like, oh my God, they didn't do what they said they would do. I've been on hold for 4 hours. Are you kidding me? Okay, for one, why are you on hold for 4 hours? Why have you, held out that long to be on hold? Right there, you're putting yourself in a victim, right? Oh my God, I've been on hold for 4 hours. You're complaining, right, as a victim. Like, this shouldn't be happening to me. And there's also that when we have those should, shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't type of things going on, that's another kind of languaging. And Leah, I know you've done a lot of linguistic studies, right? That's, again, a way that we know we're resisting something. We want it to be different. But yet, it's the axis of being resilient is saying, oh, I don't like this. What can I do about it? Versus just, again, being at the effect of it. And this is a definition from Wikipedia. Maybe not the most credible source, but of course it's out there and it's pretty common. There's a lot of commonality behind this definition. So here's victim behaviors, right? We evade responsibility for our actions. We get sympathy and support for others. As I was talking, if I'm telling my story over and over again, am I just looking for sympathy? Or am I asking them to help problem solve it with me? What's going on there? I'm trying to ally right? Ally up, I call it. You know, I want people to be on my side saying, oh, poor you, that must be awful, you know, whatever might be going on. We make people feel guilty. I mean, I've done that with my kids. I mean, what parent probably hasn't done that? And maybe not intentionally, right? But it's happened. We manipulate people into giving what you want. We always want to feel right, that right-wrongness in life, right? We want to prove a point is another thing that might show up sometimes. Judging others for not being compassionate enough, right? They're not giving you enough. Holding grudges, stuck, powerless, lack of trust. Like all of a sudden you just feel you can't trust anything or anybody. You know, like what's going on there? I think you become really argumentative, maybe more so than normal, into like the people you love. I think isolation comes into play here. That's even though it's not on my list. More criticalness, more perfectionism starts to show up than, again, normal. Some of us have that as personality traits regardless, but I would say it goes to the next level. And then scarcity, right? You come from fear. Like everything comes from fear versus, you know, the opposite of that would be, you know, coming from love. So Leah or Karen, I would love, have you seen yourself, maybe you have a story or a scenario that you're like, oh, that one hits the spot for me. You ever find yourself in those types of situations?
I'd say a lot of them hit the spot for me. I've been working for the past few months on becoming more self-aware. So I've been thinking about all these things. No story particularly comes up. Maybe that's just my own shame and getting nervous to share, feeling on the spot a little bit. But I definitely, the first few ones, like making people feel guilty, getting sympathy. I liked what you said about ally up. That's a new term that I wrote down and want to keep in mind for the future.
Yeah, you just, like, you know, again, as I say, that's one of my moments when I hear myself, and it's like, so part of my process to become aware is sharing what's going on with myself, right, with those people I trust highly. But if I find myself repeating it, right, that's where the flag goes off for me to say, whoa, what am I why am I sharing that? What am I looking for?
Right.
You know, what's the purpose of me by doing this? Am I allying? Are they just listening to me where I haven't asked, hey, how would you handle this? Mm-hmm. You know, or trying to problem solve along the way. So it's again, interesting.
I did think of one, and you actually hit it on the head with my linguistics background, the word should and trying. Those two words I've been becoming more aware of, and saying like, oh, I should work right now. And then looking at that and seeing my relationship with it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, being on a Zoom meeting here with women, what also, there's some research out there, I haven't gone deep into it, but the idea is women have more hesitation in their language. Leah, you might have researched some of this or have learned some of these innuendos, right? Women tend to have the should, would, could, right? There's more of that. Hey, I'll try. We might not be as decisive. Mm-hmm. I will get this done by 5 versus, hey, I'll try to do that for you.
Right.
And it's interesting. Women tend to have that more hesitation. And part of me, there's pros and cons to both sides of it, right? The pro side would be we're collaborative, right? I think women innately have more collaboration, kind of embeddedness into who they are. You know, like we like our villages, our girlfriends to hang out and jibber jabber with, right? But also collaboration comes to play, right? We want to collaborate. So it's like knowing the intent behind what you're doing. If saying, hey, let's make plans to go to the movie. What is everyone interested in, right? Would be a way to approach it a little bit more, let's say, assertively, versus if you're more hesitant. Hey, I know we've all been interested in going to movies before. You know, what are y'all thinking? And you're saying that because you don't make the decision. So anyway, Karen, did anything pop up for you?
Not a whole lot from this list, but I will share that in the workplace, I've had some happenings that made me feel real victimized. And I might talk to other people about it, but I don't talk to anybody at work about it. I don't want that, I don't know, doubt or wondering or something. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But yeah, and the whole thing you were touching on about repeating yourself. Yeah, I totally identify with that. Thank you. I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to leave the meeting. And if you'll make the recording available to me like you did last week, that would be wonderful, because that's a big benefit. And it's nice to see you too, Leah.
Nice to meet you, Karen.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I have another meeting going on at the same time and a whole desk full of stuff to do. So I apologize.
No problem, Karen. Glad you could join us as long as you
Okay,
can. Yeah.
bye.
So the purpose, again, when I went into this, getting really curious, you know, what it takes to become more resilient in the world. And I want to go back to prefacing, like how, like this year, the year 2020, right? You hear all of these, I don't want to say victimizing stories, right? Like everybody's a victim to 2020. It's the worst year ever. All these awful things are happening to me, right? A pandemic happened to me. And so if you hear saying it that way, you're like, no, it didn't happen to you, right? But we take things on, right? We kind of like, we own it as if it was our own, you know, and that's where I think sometimes the stories we say to ourselves can impact how we show up, how we start behaving, right, towards the pandemic, for example, where I can say there's more uncertainty in the world. There was more uncertainty before the pandemic happening. And that's just the rate of acceleration that is occurring in the world, right? Technology is just going faster and faster and faster. We're having to adapt quicker and quicker. And there's more ambiguousness because of that, because, right, we don't know what's around the corner, yet we're working on it. And to have a vaccine, was it 9 months? I mean, right, this week, vaccines are out there. It's never in the history has anything that fast, talk about acceleration, happened to move a vaccine to the degree it has, right? So the scarcity or the fear shows up like, oh, can we trust it if it was done that fast, right? Like I have a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, and she's like, Mom, when I turn 26, I might lose an arm. I just started laughing. I go, my goodness, I hope there's enough science, right, already behind it that would not be the case. Otherwise, we would not be doing a vaccine today. You know, so at least that's my view, and maybe I will be wrong. I hope to God not. You know, I'm one of those. I'm ready. I'll take the vaccine when it's ready. You know, because I think that's doing my part to help support our world to eradicate, you know, COVID-19. So when we think again of this world of how fast it's going, how uncertain it is, I think we're going to become even, you know, wanting to know everything is not going to be the case. Well, we won't. Right? Otherwise, again, so curiosity, like that's why I picked up that value. Just as like, God, if I could just be more curious about things and not have to have answers all the time, but maybe the answers will evolve over time, right? And then just to be accepting when there aren't answers, to like ground into that. So the purpose of this study was to research that connection. And I says 5 EIs, but actually when I was doing the research, I found a 6th one. And hence the one EI byproduct, which is happiness. It's not a specific one of the 15 subcomposites, but it is a byproduct, right? So that became my 6th EI composite of how we need to shift our behaviors to being empowered. So some of the questions to get real specific was what occurs for individuals to increase their awareness that they're behaving as a victim? What things can show up? Does self-perception support individuals to move from victim to empowered? Does decision-making support, right, individuals moving from victim to empowered? Stress management, optimism, empathy, and then happiness was the last one. And so, of course, through multiple literatures that I read, I have a lot of cited work here. When a person is in a state of fear or anxiousness, there is typically a lack of awareness, right? So Leah, we were talking about it earlier this morning. It's like, when we're blind, we're blind. How do, like, you don't know you're being a victim, right? Because I don't see it. I don't see it that way. When that's happening, right, we have that change. We want to be able to see that change is there. So to me, it's that initial feeling of being powerless. Like, I don't know what to do, right? That first thing of like, you don't even know it potentially is going on, but you don't have any answers for it either. And I know, Leah, again, when we were talking this morning, you had even made a comment about just becoming aware. Like, number one, it's just, when you think of this concept, it's becoming aware.
Being aware of like your body's reactions. So that was something I read from Brene Brown about, like, do you like stand up straight or do you clench your jaw? Like, I think I get a lot of like stress right here. And so just feeling where in your body the stress resonates. And then that at least sparks something like, oh, I'm clenching my jaw. What does that mean?
Right. So checking in with physical state, right? I think another thing is, of course, journaling is an amazing tool. Gratitude journals. Like, if you you can do like 3 gratitudes a day, right? There's research on having at least 3 a day. Like, if all of a sudden you can't do that, there's nothing to be grateful for, let's just say, then all of a sudden something's up, right? Something's blocking you. Or if you just feel off, like, God, I've had days, I remember walking downtown in Glenwood Springs, just it seemed like nothing was going right. Nothing. Like, the day when it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it was just like, oh my God, it's like everything I did, I messed up. I couldn't even articulate things anymore. And it was more of like, okay, why am I trying? And all of a sudden I had to realize I'm trying really hard today. Something is off. And I was trying to suppress it and keep like pretending everything was great. And as soon as I had that revelation and accepted, like, oh my God, today is just not going to be my best day ever. It was almost like the joy at that moment showed up and created some clarity. And it was this, oh, now I can go back to like debriefing, maybe what brought that on. If this happens again, I know to step away, step back, let it go, whatever comes up, versus trying to think the show must go on. It's like, no, it doesn't. Stop that. Mm-hmm. So, there's also this, another Lewis, who wrote a paper in 2013, the patient needs to muster up the strength to make a choice to live transcending their state of mind from victim to empowered. This came from his study on cancer patients, right? You can imagine you get diagnosed with an awful disease and awful outcome. And how do you muster, like, in that moment when you potentially get clouded by emotions, all that stuff? It's like, at some point you probably sit back and have that, okay, wow, I have a choice here. I can either fight or not, right? Let me get more facts. Let me get second opinions. What support systems do we have around us, right? That's even another big thing. Do we know we have support systems where somebody can help us? We know how to ask for help. That took me a long time in my life. I'm 50 now. When I was 40 was a revelation that I all of a sudden felt I had permission to ask for help. Prior to that, it was a sign of weakness. That's how I associated asking for help, which is furthest from the truth. It's more of like, so many people had offered me help, and I can't even imagine in those 40 years how many times I potentially pushed somebody away by not accepting it. Versus when all of a sudden the revelation happened and I accepted it, it was like, wow. And somebody made a comment to me, there's like, Andrea, you give so much. You help others all the time. Why won't you accept it? And boom, that awareness went off for me. It's like, oh my God, you're right. It's like, for once, can you receive it? And I was just like, yes, let's try it. So again, when we have those, when one is accepting of our vulnerabilities and abilities to be shame resilient, increases, right, that sense of empowerment and motivating factors. So I mean, that example of me asking for help is a perfect example of saying, oh, it's okay. it's okay. So again, it's like the context we give to things, right? And if the context is holding us back, feeling powerless, how can we shift context? And Leah, that goes to the, you know, linguistics, like how we talk to ourselves. Like, don't use the word should. If I hear myself saying should, I should do this, I should do that, I shouldn't have said that, I kind of giggle. I'm shoulding on myself. So stop doing that, right? Listen. So we have to listen to the words we choose. And then the idea is like, I want to do this, right? I don't want to do that is a much more decisive, assertive way of saying something. So emotional self-awareness correlates into resiliency. Chowdhury wrote a great article recently that emotional resilience is the ability to alleviate disempowering thoughts after confronting a negative experience. So, period. You know you're having a negative experience. It's something you resist, you don't like. I mean, sit in it for a minute, right? This is the human experience. We have to have negative to know what positive is. So you sit in it to say, oh, okay, but then know you have a choice, right? That's the aspect of being resilient. Know you have a choice to say, okay, I want to change this. This isn't working for me. I don't like it, whatever the case. Okay, well, what am I going to do about it? I think sometimes we just forget to ask ourselves that. I don't like it, right? You just think of like a 3-year-old. I don't want that. I don't like it. And even as adults, we do the same thing, right? So we behave sometimes like a 3-year-old. I hate to say it. Leah, can you relate to that?
Yeah, that actually reminds me, I recently heard the phrasing, I'm in my child thought patterns, or I'm in my adult thought patterns, and I wrote that next to your victim equals child, empowered equals adult. So
great analogy. Yes. Yep. So again, when we find ourselves in that child, like stomping your foot, you know, standing ground, drawing a line in the sand, right? Those are perfect examples to say, hey, why am I doing this, right? Is there any flexibility that'll show up? Or don't get me wrong, maybe there's a really solid reason you have to draw the line in the sand. And if you do, hopefully you're explaining that to somebody, why you really, you know, hold this belief or why that is happening, and then offer the opportunity for dialogue about it versus kind of that it's my way or the highway opportunities. And then of course, when we have emotional understanding, that of course facilitates resilience. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. If we can be like more, in a way, a healthy vulnerability with each other, expressing emotion, ways we can express ourselves. I think that's going to, of course, show us support from each other. We're going to be able to use empathy to help each other. And again, those are just other aspects of emotional intelligence, right, that are going to support resiliency. So stress tolerance. I have a theory, my own theory, probably another research paper down the road, that the word stress should be eradicated from the dictionary. Now, I know it shouldn't. I mean, there's the way stress is used, and we did a webinar with Stephanie Stanfield last week, the power of stress, the secret power of stress. And the idea was, you know, when there's stress, there's a need for change, right? There's something's changing or a need for change. So we have stress, let's say physical stress, right? You have stress of your heart. Something's not working, right? There's a need for something to change because it's maybe overworking or something, right? Hence, it's not at a normal place. It's changed, so if it needs to regulate back to normal, whatever that is for an individual, right? How do you do that? It's almost like victim to empowered. It's the same thing. So stress, it's our association with it. To me, if you could, when you hear somebody say, oh my God, I'm so stressed, right? I feel like that's a cliche. In the work I do with emotional intelligence, if it's somebody I'm close to, I will absolutely ask, well, what's going on? And ultimately, it's asking them to take that word stress and put it into a word of emotion. I'm so overwhelmed. Okay, you're not stressed, you're overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed because of work. Okay, what's going on at work? They just gave me 3 deadlines and I don't think I have the capacity to do it. I'm like, do you have teams? Can you delegate, right? If I were part of that conversation to help them problem solve. Or let's say it's money, right? It's an aspect of fear of scarcity, potentially, or there's some reality to it too. So the idea is, again, if we can narrow the word stress into an emotion word, I think you have more access, right, to get to choice versus being the victim. I'm so stressed, right? To me, that's a victim statement. So, and of course, it's probably being used inappropriately. The word stress probably means an emotion. And as a friend, a confidant, a coworker, whatever role you're playing with that person, maybe that's the opportunity for you to be empathetic with them and to say, hey, tell me what's going on. Don't throw my belief of stress doesn't exist, right? They're just experiencing some aspect of it that they need something to change. That's just a way to interpret what that might mean. So when a person suffers from stress-related circumstances, a person needs to come to term with those adverse situations, right? Sometimes it's acceptance. What do I need to do to change? How do I understand it better, right? All of those sort of things show up. And then a person with high resilience will be able to deal with stress more effectively. And there's different ways of dealing with stress. So like if you're having, let's say there's a physical stress or a mental stress, and again, Stephanie went into this really well in her last webinar. I would encourage anybody to go back and watch it. But there's different, like because you're in mental stress, maybe you need something to relieve the mental, right, pressure that's going on. If it's a physical stress, maybe you need something more physical to relieve that. So a massage, right? Or if running is your thing, or some lifting weights, or skiing, skinning, whatever, riding a bike, right? Those can help create those endorphins, right? Those joy things that ultimately help you have a clear brain where you don't see that pressure as much as it was. It's just a way to alleviate stress. Problem solving comes into play. It's like, how do we know to solve it, right? I mean, we're problem solvers by nature as just being human. But when, I loved how, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this right? Yin and sun. It's like that idea of when we have positive thoughts. So again, when we can use the, let's say, linguistics, the languaging that supports us to be more empowered, it's going to help us be better at problem solving. It's as simple as that.
Amen.
Yeah, that, right? It even says a cognitive ability is there to generate multiple solutions versus not generating any or one. And what I've noticed too is problem solving, when we're in, let's say, more of a victim-ish state, a negative, unhappy, whatever, right, pressured situation, we're going to feel more, right, powerless, limited. So then if we know that about ourselves, we can try to all of a sudden flip the script, something like that, to say, okay, I know I'm not going to be at my best problem solving right now. I need to go for my run. I need to clear my head. Like, I even know that I am more productive cognitively in the morning than the afternoon. So I leave my, let's say, when I know my brain needs to put problem solving into play, I know I have to adjust my schedules to do that in the morning versus at night. And I've even had, like, my kids will bring me homework at night, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and I'll look at them going, oh, it's not my best time, and I'll even say, can we get up early? Can we get up before school? I'd be happy to. I can guarantee you I will be so much more effective helping you with this than I will be right now. So just interesting things to learn about ourselves. And here we're flexibility and openness, right, to new ideas. Again, that's that like realm of possibilities, that curiousness versus I got to find the right answer, right? Perfectionism comes into, I got to have the right answer. So then you put that pressure again on yourself, and it'll limit the actual problem solving ability you have versus if you kind of just go at it with ease and joy, saying, I know I have problem solving ability. Let's see what shows up. Maybe I need to collaborate with 3 others just so I can expand my view. So then we get into empathy, optimism, and happiness, right? And to me, those 3 are very correlated in itself. That optimism and resiliency in conjunction, whereas resilience supports optimism and optimism supports resiliency, right? The more optimism you have, the more resilient you're going to be. The more resiliency, you have the opportunity for choice, the more optimistic you're going to be. They just go hand in hand. And then in Weiss and his colleagues, and he wrote a paper in 2020, conducted a happiness route study that resulted in individuals who practiced positive thinking were more enthusiastic and optimism. And Leah, I don't know this much about you, but you've talked a lot about that positive psychology, positive thinking. I know with your degree already in psychology. Do you have anything to add?
Well, my last name is Weiss, so I think I've actually reached out to, I think her name is Leah Weiss, spelled the same but pronounced Leah, and I have researched her, and I think that she's doing great things in Stanford.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm all about happiness and positive psychology, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head with your, I think there's 6 or 5 of those big statements that you said: the emotional self-awareness, stress tolerance, problem solving. And Martin Seligman with Positive Psych at Penn has his own things that fall line in line with yours. His are positive emotions and engagement and relationships and things like that. So it's cool to hear the slightly different and also equally sound ways of looking at it.
Great. Good. More validation, right, to the concepts behind here. So I start to think, like, what for, you know, anybody watching this, you know, what things do you do in a week, a day, a month that brings in some of that, let's say, optimistic, positive type of thinking? Like, do you notice when you have negative thought versus positive thought, like empowering thought versus victim thought? You know, and the more in tune you can be to those things, the better. I had a very good friend of mine share with me years ago, and he's like, Andrea, why don't you start a gotcha journal? I'm like, what's a gotcha journal? You know? And it was like, when you've gotten, like, meaning things aren't going as well as you thought. Like, it could be you've been triggered by something or somebody. You don't like how something's going. You know, you just gotten. Again, it's almost like you're, call it a victim journal, whatever you want. But I loved how it was gotcha journal. And he said, make it a game. Have fun with it. Like, when you're gotten, you know, it's like, notice what happened, your environment, how you showed up, and then, of course, rewrite your story. And I say that in so many ways, right? When we talk about emotional regulation, when you're in a situation and it's like you feel tongue-tied, it's like, that's okay. The next time that happens, make a plan. Like, the next time you're in the room with that person who somehow seems to trigger you, you already know you'll likely be triggered.
I've been doing that this week. So I'm visiting Florida. I'm visiting my partner's family. And I do feel triggered sometimes. And I've been role playing or talking through, okay, what kinds of conversations should we have at dinner? And what do we want it to look like? And it's been a really positive experience.
Yeah, right. So it's like, we have to invest in ourselves. We have to give time for us to look at how I can do that differently the next time. If we don't create that type of new opportunity for us in our brain, our default will bring us right back to what we've been doing, that insanity. Oh, I didn't like that, right? So again, anytime we can come up with planning, oh, I need to have this conversation, how should I do it, right? My favorite book, one of my favorite books, Crucial Conversations by Vital Smarts. If you have difficult conversations, ones that have high stakes or high emotions, they've got amazing resources, templates of how to start conversations, how to, you know, engage in what your emotion piece might be into it, and then what, you know, like how to be clear. They have an acronym called STATE, like how to, you know, I can't even remember the acronym at the moment, but it's really succinking, right, through the process of how you can plan in advance how to approach things in a more, call it, effective, with power or empowered way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see, we've got, at the end of the day, right, there's a lot of data out there that basically says that emotional intelligence is absolutely correlated to resilience. If you want to develop more resilience, of course, we've got some tricks already that we've shared with you, some things through my personal experience. Leah's, loved how Karen chimed in. But we can really go into that, you know, what kind of I have negative thoughts. Is there a way I can shift them? Or just be aware of them, work through them. Why am I resisting something? You know, I haven't had an outlet to release all this stuff. I've been internalizing it more. You know, I got brain dumps. I don't know if anybody's heard of that before. It's like I grab a piece of paper or a Word document, whatever kind of technology or a piece of paper. I like paper because I don't know, it's something with the pencil on it, where then I can look at it, I can adjust, I can make notes. I just brain dump everything going on in my head, from like the top of the list thoughts to the bottom, until it's like I'm empty, right? Till my brain is empty. And I get
Do you do that every day?
Not every day, fairly regular though. It might turn into a to-do list, but it goes sometimes beyond a to-do list, right? It's just like, I don't know, I want to go on a trip. Right? I know I'm not going to go on a trip anytime soon, but you know, it's a thought. And it's taking up space in my brain. So by doing a brain dump, it actually, to me, opens up space for new thinking, positive thinking, assessing what's going on. So then even when you see it on paper, I've done this too, where I phrased everything as what ifs. What if I go on a vacation now, right? Well, there's too much at risk, save it for later, right? Type of a thing. But by putting what if, opens it up to potentially possibilities, you know, and all of a sudden you see it in a different light, new perspectives, right? Can be that positive shift from negative to positive. So there's some great techniques out there to help open up space, find possibilities. You know, even when I look at on paper, sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I can't even believe this is taking up brain space right now. Let it go. You know, that's a silly thought. It's a unvalidated fear. Like, you know, fear, the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real, right? So when sometimes those fears show up, you can just go, oh my God, yeah, no, stop any energy that is going towards that thought, right? And release. So as I mentioned, I've done almost 600 of these EQ assessments. So I've had some amazing conversations with individuals that help. Even, you know, my experience would say, and it's researched as well, like empathy is becoming less and less of a skill of individuals. And I think because of that rate of acceleration, we just got to we're in a doing mode, get things done where we don't take time to reflect, debrief, put the time into ourselves, you know, plan, take care of ourselves, right? Self-care for that matter. But I've learned a lot from doing these EQ assessments. I'm seeing trends over the years, and it's been really insightful. So of course, if I ever did any further research, of course, I would be notifying individuals of, hey, well, all the conversations are confidential, but maybe I could use the data or something like that. But of course, I would inform anybody. And of course, that's part of protection of human rights, right? Whenever you do research, you have to make sure it's ethical, moral, it's transparent. It's vetted by some agencies, right, to be worthy of research, those sort of things. So again, I have not formally done anything like that. I've not used any of that data outside of, I've had a lot of experience doing emotional intelligence assessments and supporting individuals on that journey to increase their emotional intelligence. So discussion, you know, I think moving forward through this research, I really realized that this is just the tip of the iceberg, at least in my understanding. It's, to me, when you look at EQ, right, it's like when we have the hardships, sometimes we're unconscious to it, and then how do we become more conscious of it? And I think a mixed method research, right, using data from EQ assessments, and of course, now you have very clear hard data through measurement instruments, and then you could do the qualitative and quantitative, right? The other side of the research would be through the one-on-one conversations with individuals, just to gather different experiences of what people have based on specific EQ composites. So I think there's a lot more that can be learned. And then the other thing I was thinking, like, God, there are some called behavior styles out there in the world that people are like, just tell me what I need to do, right? Give me the answers. Why is this occurring? What's step one that I should take, right? Also, what I learned is there's, to me, the roadmap exists in the model. And I think I showed you the model earlier in the program, right, with the 6 things. It's, to me, where I would start is looking at that model and saying, okay, where am I? What is going to give me the most immediate gratification, right, to move from victim? I just need to run, right? Somebody be like, oh my God, I haven't exercised today. And I know when I exercise, I'm in a much better mental space, right? Boom, great. You know what to do. But then maybe it's deeper. So then you're like, okay, maybe I do need to sit down and do a brain dump, right? Or I do need to sit down and talk it out with a friend just so I can hear what's going on. Again, that's part of my process, right? I'll jibber jabber with somebody just so that I can hear myself do it. Because otherwise, if I internalize it, it just festers. That's where I can feel like, Leah, like the tension, right, showing up in my left shoulder, for example, which I just had surgery. So it's interesting where we find these things show up. So if there was a roadmap, I don't think, again, I think the model has a pretty good aspect of where you could potentially start. And it's going to be trial and error because there's, humans, we're not all alike, right? One person is going to be more physical, one person is going to be more cognitive, and it's going to take different paths to do it. But maybe there is, I think the possibility is maybe for, let's say if you use DISC as a behavior styles, Ds should potentially approach it this way, right? Is on the DISC could approach it this way. S's could approach it this way. So I do think there is further opportunity to develop what roadmaps might exist so that, again, some people have maybe better access because they might not, let's say you're so far in victim, maybe even to the point of depression. And that's where I would say definitely go see a psychologist, go get the professional help. Emotional intelligence is a piece. And there are psychologists, right, who have EQ certifications as well that I would probably go find a specialty in that way. But if you go so deep, right, then of course to me it's go get that professional help to really help figure out what is the correct roadmap to support you moving from victim to empowered. But again, EI is a beautiful access. It's a foundational human skill. And it does indicate fulfillment in life. So of course you can contact RFL and myself to support you in those types of assessments. And then here is a bunch of the research. And let's see where Weiss comes up. Yeah, L.A. Weiss, there it is. Love that. Pretty soon that L. Weiss is going to be you, right, Leah?
I hope so.
I'll be researching you. So
and I wanted to say one other thing, and you mentioned it in your talk earlier about those 3 things that went well that day. How did you phrase it?
3, like gratitude, 3 gratitudes.
Yeah.
I will
yeah.
say, yeah. Go ahead.
Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've recently purchased this book. It's called The 5-Minute Journal. And in it, it's, let's see here. It does basically outline, you can see some of my writing. It's super simple. I love its format. And what's in white is basically like something you do in the morning, and the gray is what you do at night, the reflection piece. And it talks about like, I am grateful for, write down 3 things. What would make today great, right? Setting intentions. And then a daily affirmation, I am. Like, who am I today? Like, who do I want to be? Who should I show up to be because of what I have in front of me, to prepare myself for the day? I love that. And then at night it says amazing things that happened today, right? So looking at the positive stuff in your day. And then the last one is, how could I have made today even better? Again, writing, that's that idea of like the next time I want to have this happen, creating your future. So I've just started.
I do is I just write what went well, and I do 3 things every day. And it's suggested by Martin Seligman, the one I referred to at Penn earlier with positive psychology. So you say what went well and why did it go well? So the example the book gave was my husband brought home dessert for me because he's sometimes thoughtful. And just like even those little ones make a big difference in your life.
Yep. So a second book, I had to go all in, right? They have this productivity planner. This is just another level of like creating those high priorities for yourself. And again, the formatting is super simple. Like you'll see first thing up there, mastermind, right? Priority number 1, mastermind.
I love that.
RFL has. So again, it really helps set those intentions for the day. And then you go back and the squares and the circles are based on like time tracking, Leah. So you can go in and, each circle is like an hour, you can circle it halfway or whatever. But I love just like, simple, right? It's just, I love the simplicity of it. So it's like easy to stay on top, right? It doesn't become this like huge new habit to create. These are really simple, and I've really appreciated those, and it keeps you on track. It keeps you going in the right direction. And of course, we're human. So we're going to trip, right? We're going to have the bad day, but my God, a bad day. It's like what I say, it's like, it's a bad day, but it's not my worst day. You know, and again, that's even, call it a play on words, to basically say, you know, like, I am still grateful for everything that is happening and what I am being taught, right? Especially when we're challenged. That's a big thing that I've been doing recently. It's like, wow, another challenge. Like, take a deep breath and kind of go, okay, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And trust ourselves, right? Trust myself. Like, I have the capability, or I have the resources to figure it out. So it's a lot of things I've learned. This research has really helped support and validate a lot of it. And then even knowing where to go to look, right? Am I aware of something? Am I not, right? Again, how am I coping? That stress tolerance, even self-care, you almost interchange the words there. You know, how's my problem solving ability? Oh, right. Like, you just gave up. Like, wait, why? You never give up, right? Like, what's going on with that? Like, I used to, well, I'll get back to it, but like, you skin up Sunlight, right? A local ski resort. And as I get going, and you kind of feel that, like, oh, why am I doing this today? And then all of a sudden I'll say to myself, you've never not made it to the top. You never not made it to the top, right? And that's just that, okay, yep, here we go, right? Like, why would I give up now? I've never done that before. It's like, you've got this. Take a break if you need it, right? Whatever is going on that day. Some days you whip up, go, you know, like out of the wind, and then the next day it's like you're dragging, and you're like, wow, what's happened between yesterday and today? Or, oh, it's because I did it yesterday. I'm doing back-to-back days. I don't normally do that, whatever, right? But that's just call it a scenario of different things that go on in our lives, right? There's ebbs and flows in everything. Sometimes we can't keep ticking at a pace we've been at. We got to slow it down. We need to recharge. I've noticed that about myself too, that as I get older, and I'm not that, I don't even think of myself as that old, but I do realize there's like adjustments that we have to make to still be at our best, to have fulfillment in life. Leah, any closing words, any thoughts or questions that you might have?
I'm just glad to be a part of Roaring Fork Leadership, and looking forward to working with you. And I also think I have best problem solving in the morning, so our schedules line up well.
Yep. Empathy. I once had a person on one of these webinars say, is there such thing as empathy fatigue? And I go, oh, absolutely. Put any word in front of fatigue, right? In the English dictionary almost. Absolutely. You know, and again, maybe it's just that ebb and flow. And if you can't provide the empathy needed at that moment, of course, just tell somebody, hey, I'm here for you, you know, but right now, like, this is just a tough conversation for me to take on right now, or to listen to. Can we do it tomorrow? You know what I mean? Just again, if you know in the morning is a better time for you to take that on versus 8 or 9 at night. You know, we have to take care of ourselves in order to be there for others, right? So that's just one of those things that, yes, empathy fatigue, or like, you can listen to somebody, but maybe don't take on more than what you're being asked to do. Maybe all they want you to do is just listen, right? Doesn't mean you have to problem solve, but your brain may be making up, oh my God, I got to have empathy and I have to problem solve with them. It's like, no, maybe all you have to do is be there, just hold space for them. You know, so there's different ways these things can show up for each one of us. Just to be more resilient, model resilience for others, that I think can be contagious, to support us all as we have 3-6 months more, maybe even longer, just depending on, I'm sure, right, all this unknown that is still ahead of us with the pandemic. But the light is at the end of the tunnel, and just think of think of the skills we've learned. Let's say over the last year or two, whatever that time frame is going to be, that will be such a better, I think, human being on the other side of it, based on what we've learned and what we were able to tolerate and learn. So appreciate, Leah, you being with me today, and for all of those that will watch this recording. We will again pick up our resiliency experience in January. I have Michelle Follis, Brad Stevenson lined up, Aaron Clark, and one other, somebody from Valley Life for All. And there's a little bit of a theme around social justice, equity, inclusion, diversity, and just again, kind of that, how we change, positive thinking. I would say that's definitely in there as well. So please continue to join us on Tuesdays, noon to 1, starting 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.